Do you find yourself running out of time to accomplish your work? Are you spending time doing things that you're not that good at? There are effective ways to outsource these tasks so you can focus on your business. This is the Virtual Success Show. We bring the inside scoop on outsourcing success for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. And now, here are your hosts, Matt Maloof and Barbara Turley.
Welcome to this episode of the Virtual Success Show. Really excited to be sharing and talking with Siimon Reynolds today. But before we introduce Siimon, hey Barb, how are you going?
I'm great, Matt. Thank you very much. Delighted and excited about this show too, to hear Simon's great insights into virtual teams.
Fantastic. So, and welcome Siimon to the show.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, Siimon and I, we work closely together at the Fortune Institute, and I met Siimon back in 2008, and I think at that time you just moved from Australia to the United States, Siimon. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm there now, here in almost always sunny Los Angeles.
Fantastic. And what amazed me at the time when we met, and at that time when we met, you were coaching me, and was that you were running your coaching business. You were living in the US, and yet you had team here in Australia doing a lot of the coordinating and the like for you. And so I guess what we wanted to share with everybody today was your experiences with virtual teams and using virtual staff for many functions within your business or businesses, and your experiences with that. So if we could start with just sharing who you've got on your team or your virtual team, and what sort of key roles they play or tasks they do for you.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I have a virtual assistant and have had for many years in Australia, and she's responsible for doing a whole lot of stuff. She sets up meetings for me. She actually handles a lot of my finances. So, she pays bills that are needed and all that kind of stuff. I use her also for research. So that could be work research, or can you check out a company that does X, Y, and Z? Or I even use her for things like holidays. So if I want to go to Italy, I don't search through for the best hotel in Milan. I say I want a hotel with these within these parameters in Milan. Can you present me three good examples of that? So that's incredibly useful and an amazing way to slice off time. And I'll even use her to slice off a minute numerous times a week. So, for instance, if someone wants an appointment with me, I'll just send it through to her. And even though that may only take her 1 or 2 or 3 minutes to actually get into the diary, that's just one less task I have to do. So I use it for super short tasks. I use it for personal and business tasks, and I use it for some financial tasks. Now, in addition to that, I have a salesperson in another part of California, and through some of my work in America coaching, I have a closer. So someone who the clients would find out about me on the internet, and eventually they go through a webinar system, and eventually they'd get on a call with the salesperson. And so that's entirely virtual. I have had one lunch with him at his request. He wanted to actually see if I existed, or I was an alien life force that was only audio. So we had a physical lunch. But other than that, I've never seen him. And then thirdly, I have someone in the Philippines who does all my graphic design and my slides for presentations. If I want some kind of brochure done, he'll do that. If I need a logo done, he'll do that. So they're the three people that I'm working with now. Matt, you and I work together in a whole different company where we use a whole series of virtual assistants for design, for Infusionsoft, the back-end CRM systems, etc.
Yes, yeah. And with the three key people you mentioned there, being your assistant, the the salesperson you've got and the designer, are they all full-time? Are they part-time, or are they on project basis?
Yeah, all project basis, none full-time. So my assistant works on average between 4 and 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. My art person in the Philippines could work as little as 0 hours to, on the upside, might work on a big week, might work 15 hours for me. And then the salesperson probably does average of a day a week. So he's very much doing sales for other people as well.
Okay, fantastic. And why have you chosen to use virtual teams for these roles, Simon, rather than, say, having people locally that you can have access to, within your office or the like?
Well, it's definitely cheaper. There's no doubt about it, and it's really interesting to see the very high quality often of people who are virtual assistants. Better and better. Some of the Asian countries are just improving in leaps and bounds as it becomes a more established career for someone to be a virtual assistant. But even in America, you find that there's a number of states, Arizona being one of them, where you can find very inexpensive and good Americans doing virtual assistant work as well. So clearly priced. But a huge advantage of virtual assistants is the time. So plenty of times, if I'm up against a deadline, if I was to rely on someone in my own time sphere, then I'd probably be paying a fortune for someone to work overnight. But I can just switch to another country and get somebody to start working on something while I sleep. And I do that frequently, particularly with the art guy. I'll wake up in the morning and there will be 7 or 8 hours work done by him. Or even with Tanya, my assistant for my day-to-day secretarial stuff, she'll frequently do stuff while I'd be asleep. So the advantage is you're a 24/7 operation, and the cycle of getting work done is much shorter. And then finally, it's the fact they're not on full time. I know that's often the primary reason that someone chooses a virtual assistant, that you can just outsource when you need them. But it's just one of many reasons for using them, in my opinion.
And just on the time zone shift, particularly, say, with Tanya, your assistant, are there ever any challenges when you're across, such a wide gap in the time difference?
Yeah, that's a good question. Plenty of challenges. Half the time, I'm in the west coast of America. She's in Sydney in Australia. So the time difference, in effect, even though it's a different day, so it's technically, like 17 hours difference. For this, how it manifests is there's either 5 or 7 hours difference, depending on what country has daylight savings at one point in time. And plenty of times it works that I stop work and she's still working. But on the other hand, in the mornings, she's not there. So she doesn't come on until about my 2 p.m. typically, for most of the year. And sometimes she doesn't come on until 3 or 4 p.m. Once again, depending on when each country starts its daylight savings and stops its daylight savings. Now, when there's a 7-hour difference, that's tough. So, it's for me, unless you just want them to work at night, if you want to liaise with them during the day, you want to keep, have the difference somewhat relevant. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If I was really going into virtual assistants in great depth, I'd probably have them standing by, but not on retainer, so not costing me. I'd have 1 or 2 standing by in other countries, so including my own, America, where I am now, so that if I needed work at any point in time, I had someone. Now, I haven't organized that yet, but I think that's the potential for me, is to have someone that I trust in several different areas, secretarial or admin, in art, possibly in sales, but it's probably not necessary. And they're sitting around the world, and 24 hours a day, if I need them, they're ready. That's the ultimate for me, and not having that can be a disadvantage.
Fantastic. And all your assistants work from home?
Yeah, they do. And, an interesting thing again here is that you're getting often a better person because they don't want to work in an office. Here's an interesting stat. Around 60%, I've heard 60% of IBM staff worldwide are now outsourced. So obviously it's a giant, complex organization doing complex activities and complex products. So that's absolutely extraordinary. Now, why are they doing that? Part of the reason is they can attract high caliber people with the promise of working at home. And so, this is another reason that, the virtual workforce is just going to grow and grow, is a lot of people say, you know what, I'd like to come in at lunchtime and cuddle my child. I don't want to just see them for a brief period in the beginning of the day and the end, or even only one of those. And so from sheer caliber of people, it's a very attractive proposition, as IBM have found out.
Yeah, it's certainly, I think, and having had people work in from home and from a workspace as well, I tend to find both work. Like you said, it comes down to the person. I think as long as the person's happy with wherever they're working in their environment, it works. So for some, I've had assistants that working from home just doesn't work for them. They're not set up properly. The environment doesn't support it, or it's too noisy, or whatever it might be. But on the other hand, some of them wouldn't have it any other way. So I think it's a interesting point. Simon, or actually, Barbara, have you got any questions for Simon?
I do actually, yes, Simon. I've got a very interesting one for you. I'd love to know your thoughts on this one. I'm sure you hear this a lot as well. I mean, you deal with entrepreneurs all the time in coaching programs, and you've privately coached lots of people. What about the hurdle? And I call it a hurdle because it is a big hurdle for people to get over. Early stage entrepreneurs, or the solopreneur type person who's currently doing everything themselves. I hear a lot of people say, it doesn't work for me. I can't get virtual assistants, the whole virtual team thing to work. And they just sort of run back to doing everything themselves. What advice would you give to people who are at that sort of juncture where they can't really grow unless they get a team, but they just have this fear and this thing holding them back that it won't work for them?
Well, there's two types of virtual assistants, as far as I can see, that you can get. The first is that you deal with them direct. And then the second is you use a company that manages them and has pre-selected them. And I would definitely recommend that option for that style of person. And in fact, for most people who seek a virtual assistant, it may be, not always, but it may be that it's slightly more expensive to have an in-between manager. But what happens is you're very sure of the quality of the person. You're very sure of the management of the person and the efficiency of the person. And it's an easier process to first step into having a virtual assistant to work with an organization like that. So I'd ask them, I guess I'd suggest to them to do a bit of research. Go and check out some of these people who manage and procure on your behalf high-quality virtual assistants, because that makes it easier. So a lot of the problems of, or how am I going to run it, or I don't know how I can do this, or I'm not very digitally oriented, etc., are all very real problems. Most of them are mitigated by using a kind of a middleman in the middle to help sort it out and be a lot easier. And then the second thing I'd say is this, that like anything on the planet that's of value, study it. Say, okay, I'm going to spend for 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to spend an hour studying the world of virtual assistants. I'm going to look online, I'm going to look at the pros, I'm going to look at the cons, I'm going to look on how to run them. All of these are free blogs around the place, free pieces of advice. And, you spend 3 hours studying the area. It really gives you a lot more confidence. Going to forums about it, etc., online forums, gives you a lot more confidence that A, it's viable, B, it's possible for someone who's unskilled in the virtual world to enter this field, and C, that it give people confidence that there's a lot of people who are making this work, and that there's a good chance it can work for them.
And a follow-on question from that then would be, because the other problem I'm seeing with a lot of clients of ours would be that's sort of the first problem, and then once we solve for that problem, around the management and, giving comfort around how the person is managed, etc. It comes down to, well, now you have a VA, let's say, for example, and all the HR side of it is managed, etc. But then a lot of it boils down to your ability to create your own processes and the systems and how your business operates and what this VA is going to actually be doing for you. So how much weight would you place on people getting very clear around their processes, etc., so that they can get success with a VA?
Well, I think that's really valid point. It's not a set and forget. It's not they're magical and you just throw it all over to them.
Go.
Yeah. Look, it's no different from having a real life person in your office. They're going to run a lot better when they're given processes, when there's a system of checking up on them. I was coaching someone only yesterday, and they've just instituted a system on checking up on their staff every couple of days as to whether they've actually done the stuff that they said they were going to do, and it's made a massive difference to their quality. So if that's the case in real life, then it must be even more so in the virtual world when they're not in front of you. And it's a great point, because developing these processes is not going to just make them a more effective virtual assistant. It's going to make your business a much better business anyway, instead of you just winging it and being able to get away with it because the person happens to sit across from you in the office. These kind of disciplines should be done for real world offices and virtual offices, but certainly doing it for virtual is a great way of improving the smoothness of operations.
Yeah, we see that a lot. The people who do really well, in our experience anyway, are those who really focus on their processes and actually having a good relationship, developing that rapport with the VA and actually discussing their business vision, the strategy, and then how those processes link in and how that VA actually, what part they play, I guess, in the whole thing.
Yeah, again, a good point. A lot of people might say, treat these people because they can't see them as much that they're not holistic humans, of course, and that's ridiculous. Winning them over, winning their hearts over towards your company and towards you is fundamental leadership. And just because someone's virtual doesn't mean the fundamentals of leadership don't apply.
Mm. What would you say to someone? Sorry, Matt, I just had one more question on that. Sort of another follow-on point is that sometimes people, what I hear anyway, and this is a frustration, I guess, from clients who are not getting success. Sometimes the feedback I will get is, they're not proactive enough. And I sort of feel, well, with a virtual assistant, for example, how proactive should we expect them to be? Or are we, where does the line go between an implementer and a strategist? I'm interested to know your thoughts there.
Well, I mean, it depends on the manner in which they're employed. So, if someone's being employed on an ad hoc basis, or versus, you would have to, of course, be completely proactive in briefing them. Whereas if someone's booked for a certain number of hours a week, then yes, the virtual person ideally would be a little proactive themselves. But what do people want for the money? You've got someone really keen. You've got someone who understands the tasks. You've got them usually incredibly inexpensively versus many other alternatives. If the owner of the business has to do a little more pushing, has to do a little more leadership, has to do a little more planning, well, that's a small price to pay for all the other advantages.
Mm. Great.
Simon, I've got just last two quick questions. Specifically with regards to Tanya, your virtual assistant, your secretary. How often do you meet face-to-face with Tanya?
Well, each time I fly to Australia, we try to have a lunch for an hour and a half. And I think that's good for the relationship. I don't think by any means it's necessary. I think it's good, but not necessary. So if we can't, then so be it. I don't think you have to meet them. But, after you have lunch with someone, you always feel a little closer to them, as long as it's an enjoyable lunch. And I think that's worth a lot. They feel more loyalty towards you. There's a better bond. You feel more comfortable talking to them from a great distance. So yeah, definitely worth that.
And then just the follow on from that is how often do you the both of you communicate week to week?
Not enough. I'm pretty bad on that. So we're communicating via email every day, and we've tried to initiate 10-minute phone calls 3 times a week. And often they'll extend to 20, 25 minutes. But we started putting short phone calls in the diary to make sure we at least spoke to each other a few times during the week. And most of the time I stick with that. But it's something that I've not been as good at as I should, and the danger of it, if you're just constantly emailing people, is you begin to be a little disconnected, and they feel a bit. I mean, I'm fine with it, but often people, and she's a case in point, she might feel a little like she's sitting on a deserted island. So yeah, I think it's important to have regular calls, and I think it's important to have them diarized. You can add them, add ad hoc ones to it. But definitely have a base series of foundational meetings locked in the diary, and that helps keep the system smooth.
Fantastic. Barb, were there any other questions that you had for Siimon?
I just have one sort of wrap up little question that I'd love to throw out at Siimon, and I know what the answer is going to be. I think, but I think for the listeners, it'd be good to have this one. Siimon, in your view, you've grown many companies yourself massively. You've coached a lot of companies into massive success. Can you grow a company all by yourself?
Well, it depends what size.
Well, can you grow, let me ask the question a different way. Without, once initially in startup, we're all after sales. It's all about sales and marketing. But then when we start to grow, without systems, processes and teams, can you create the sort of entrepreneurial freedom that everyone is after and grow an epically large company? Or how difficult is it to do it all by yourself?
Well, I mean, clearly it's well nigh impossible.
Yes.
You would have to have an incredibly automated digital business to be able to do it. You need people, and the more you grow, the more you need people, to the point where, as a guy I used to be in business with used to say to me, he said, look, his main job is to make himself redundant. And he was always looking to do that. And sure enough, when we had a company that was worth over $500 million, he used to sit in his office, and I don't think he had that much to do, because he had truly made himself redundant. So that's the aim, but you're only going to do that through good people, and as you say, through good processes, and finally through fair remuneration. Great.
Thank you so much. There's fantastic insights into how you do it, and I know the listeners are going to benefit a lot from some of the insights today.
Fantastic.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate being here.
Fantastic. Thanks, Siimon. And that's our show for today. Be sure to continue to listen. Add any comments or questions at the underneath, and we're looking forward to continuing to bring you these amazing interviews and insights into the world of virtual success. Thanks, Barb, for your time, and I look forward to our next episode.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Si.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Virtual Success Show. If you found this show helpful, take a moment to share it with a friend so that we can all grow together. Find out more about the inside scoop on outsourcing success by going to our website, virtualsuccessshow.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.